Hey, what's up guys, how's it going? Welcome to another Epic 7 build guide. Now you being here means you either finally decided to give him a go, or you just pulled him from ML Summons and wanted to make sure if your Galaxy bookmarks didn't go to waste. Well, I'll tell you right now, he's definitely up there, but you might lose a bit of yourself in the process, and you will see why later on. Chaos Sect, also known as Axe God, is a dark type warrior class unit that deals damage based on HP, both his own and enemy. It sounds a bit misleading, but we'll get to it. You'll know what I mean. Both his skills and role makes him one of the most versatile units in the game. He also has a specialty change, and this gives him a big boost overall. Here's a fun fact. He was called Axe God even before they released his specialty. That should give you an idea how good he is. I think there was a time when they nerfed him, can't remember exactly when it was, but they did that so they can release his specialty version without making him too good. It was a rebalance to sum it up. At that time, he was one of the units that players used quite often, but his popularity slowed down when Smilegate released newer units with new and better effects. With that, let's jump right to his skills and see how much of a god players claim him to be. So his first skill, Disconnect, is a single target skill that will inflict bleeding for one turn when he crits. Damage increases proportional to the enemy's lost health. The lower the HP, the more damage this skill do. Perfect against bosses since they generally have high HP and you will be chipping away at their health rather than taking them out in 1 or 2 turns. Bleed does around 30% of the caster's attack, while ignoring 70% of the target's defense. This part does seem like a complete joke. I mean, bleeding for 1 turn will not do any significant damage at all. However, hold your horses. I can tell you that this is not a big problem. Right now as it is, it serves more as a finisher or an extra damage boost. It doesn't make him bad at all. Once we go through the rest of his skills, you will see why. His second skill, Attack Chain, is an AoE skill and grants an extra turn if an enemy is killed. Like Disconnect, damage also scales based on enemy lost health. This skill is pretty good with mob clearing. That extra turn is going to help if one of the mobs survives. Also, the extra turn will help reduce the cooldown from all his skills, including this one. With this skill at a 3-turn cooldown, if you trigger the extra turn, you will only have to wait 1 turn to use it again. Pretty useful in farming. It has a soul burn effect at a cost of 10 that will increase the damage dealt. If you're not sure whether you can kill the enemy, just use his soul burn. Axe God's third skill, Plague Strike, has an 80% chance to apply Defense Break for 2 turns. That's it. Seriously, that's the selling point. You see, back then in the early days of Epic 7, Axe God and Tierria were one of the best defense breakers in the game. When Tierria got nerfed and hit the ground, Axe became the sole survivor until more better units came out, especially those who have AoE defense break with high effect chance. But don't get me wrong, even now he's still a good pick. What separates him with the rest of the defense breakers is his element, Dark. So not only does he has a high debuff chance, but also doesn't have any elemental disadvantage that will hinder his hit chance. When he goes through his specialty change, this skill changes to Vigorous Strike. In addition to his defense break, he will recover 20% of his max HP. This one also has damage scaling, however slightly different to his other skills. Damage increases proportional to his max HP. The more health he has, the more damage this will do. Overall, it's a damn good skill. You have defense break, sustain, and damage scaling. One thing to note is that he has one of the lowest cooldown in terms of S3 in the game, and I'm excluding Skill Enhance here. This is the reason why the shitty bleed effect on his S1 is not a problem at all. Due to the low cooldown of his skills, you won't be using S1 a lot, you will probably be cycling through his skills instead. Now I did mention earlier that he can go through specialty. Same process as Lorna if you have her. The advantage of units with specialty change is, for one of their skills gets extra effects, and two, you have access to a skill tree. The skill tree is a huge boost for these units. You get extra stats as well as extra effects for mostly all of their skills. Upgrading the skill tree will be pretty cheap at the start, but gradually becomes expensive the more you invest in it. Unfortunately with Axe God, it's mandatory to get most of his rune nodes maxed out when using him in endgame contents. Remember when I said that they nerfed him to make room for his specialty change? Yeah, so if you want to return him to his former glory, you've got to farm those runes. You will probably lose a bit of your sanity grinding resources. I've been there and I've done it. In the end, it's all worth it. Well, for now, let's have a look at his skill tree. We'll go through each rune and which you should prioritize first. Axe God has low base HP, I kid you not. Knowing that his kit benefits a lot with high HP, this is kinda like a slap in the face. Good thing is, his skill tree does have a few runes that gives him extra HP, so it's not all that bad. The first 3 runes at the top all increases health. The first 2 increases up to 5%, while the last one is 10%. Altogether, this gives him 20% more HP. Kinda like a free health set. This is the only reason why they made his HP low. Getting these is good to increase survivability, as well as give him a bit more damage from S3. But you don't have to max it. Not yet. I would suggest you go straight to Frisian Rune and max it. This increases the percentage damage of S3 by 5%. Now I don't really know what the base is or how significant the extra damage is from this rune, but just know that Axe God's S3 is one of the hard-hitting defense breaker skills in the game. A nice extra boost is always welcome. On the second row, we have Thorn Rune, which I personally avoid. It adds another bleed when he uses S1. So instead of 1, he now has 2. For you it may have more significance, for example if you are running Baiken, or units who deal more damage the more debuff the target has. If this is the case, then this is something you might want to consider. Anything other than that, then I would skip it entirely. The next one, Obscurity, decreases cooldown of S2 by up to 15% when defeating an enemy using this skill. This is definitely something you max if you are using him as a farmer, since that extra turn will make your run faster. If not, then just enhance it once and max out the one after. When using S2, there's a 50% chance to decrease attack for 1 turn. This is really good when adding him to your cleave team. Any survivors from S2 has a chance to receive this debuff and makes it easier for your team to survive the next turn if it ever comes to that. Also, this is pretty useful when fighting bosses. This is very important when building him as a frontline tank, since you'd rather use S2 for debuff rather than S1 for damage and bleed. On the bottom, we have Wedge Rune, which gives an extra 5% crit chance. I see this more as an insurance. I would max it next if you need the extra crit. If this is not the problem, I would leave it till later. Harvest Rune is really good to have. If Axe God's HP is below 50% after being attacked, he will gain up to 10% of his max HP. Pretty good survivability effect, and should max this if you are building him a tanky or bruiser build. If not, put 1 to access the next rune. So this rune increases his attack for 1 turn when attacked. It triggers up to 30%. This kinda builds up on the previous rune, except this one has a chance to trigger every time he is attacked. Definitely max this one, it's a really good damage boost, and since his base speed is low, and probably be at the back of the turn, he has plenty of opportunities to trigger this effect. Once this is done, max out Wedge Rune if you haven't done it yet, and the rest is really up to you. If you want to give him different roles, then you can either max out Health Runes, Obscurity, or Harvest Rune. In terms of gears, there's lots. I don't think you can ever go wrong with his build, especially when choosing sets. But you do need to make sure that the substats you pick matches with the role for your team. For PvE, his main role is a defense breaker, secondary depending on his gears. You can build him as support, DPS bruiser, tank support, however you like. Unfortunately, his awakening doesn't provide him with effectiveness, so you will need to gear him well and get it at a decent amount, so he can consistently land his defense break. In PvP, however, especially a cleave team, forget about his defense break and go straight to pure damage. Gearing Axe God has always been a challenge. I mean, each of his skills has different requirements to use it at its highest potential. His S1 requires him to have high crit to trigger bleed. His S2 requires him to have high damage for better chances to trigger an extra turn, and S3 requires him to have high effectiveness to trigger defense break. Even at 100% chance, it can still be resisted. S3 also needs high HP to deal more damage and HP recovery. It's not going to be easy getting high stats on all of them. You will have to sacrifice one or the other based on his main role. Tank support build for Axe God is the least favorable due to his low base speed. The reason why this is because his job is to tank as well as apply defense break. Defense breakers should always be in front of the team in terms of turn order, so the rest can benefit from the debuff. The only team composition you would run him in is if you need one turn to set everything up for a nuke. If this is the case for you, then this is a good build. 2 health sets plus 1 hit set are good for a tanky support build. This build roughly focuses on his S3. Hit set is there so he can easily hit his defense break on bosses, while the 2 health sets gives him a lot of survivability as well as damage boost and HP gain on this skill. If you plan to gear him a ring with a main stat of effectiveness, then you can swap hit set with defense or resist set. There is another variant that you can go with. Health defense hit or health defense resist works if you have decent defense gears. Substats should be a combination of HP percentage, defense percentage, and speed. He also needs both effectiveness and effect resistance, but you can pick either one as a substat as well as the gear set and get the other from his ring main stat. Overall, his main job is to apply defense break and tank for the team. Speed is there so he doesn't fall too much behind. His defense break has a 1 turn downtime considering they both have roughly the same speed. If the difference is really big, then this can go up to 2 turns, and this ruins the purpose of his job. Crit chance is not really necessary, doing damage is not his main job. Also, his S3 heal scales on 20% of his max HP, so there's no real use in building crit. For a bruiser build, Lifesteal set is a nice way to go. Since his skills is more useful in slow and longer battles, this will give him more survivability on top of his S3. If you have the full set from Abyss, that should be a good start for him. The ring, amulet, and boots all give attack percentage as a main stat, so it's an overall nice boost for his damage. Also, the substats that goes along with it are all pretty good. HP percentage, effectiveness, crit chance, attack percentage, and speed all contribute to his skills as I mentioned earlier. Pair this with either health or crit set, depending on what you need. If you don't have enough crit, then get an amulet with a main stat of crit chance. For ring, you don't really need to get effectiveness as a main stat, it's better to get them through substats instead. For full support Axe God, speed, crit, or speed health are pretty good, maximizing the use of his defense break as well as closing the gap on his S3 downtime. Furthermore, if you have units that deals more damage based on number of debuffs, then this is perfect since bleed on his S1 triggers not by chance, but whenever he lands a crit. Speed set increases his turns, which helps in stacking debuffs quicker. For a DPS build, which is mostly used in a cleave team composition as well as farming, destruction crit set are pretty good. If you don't have any destruction gears, you can use attack set instead. This build heavily focuses on his S2 to trigger his extra turn and finish off any survivor using S3. The good thing about this build is that effectiveness becomes optional, since you will be all in on damage. The plus side on having some is of course defense break as well as attack down provided from S2. Substats from these gears should be a combination of crit damage, crit chance, attack percentage, speed and health percentage, with optional substat of effectiveness. Amulet should either have crit chance or attack percentage as main stat, but since he does gain an extra 5% crit chance from skill tree, most likely you can just get it through substats instead. Ring should always have attack percentage, and for boots, in most cases attack percentage, but in PvP, it may be better to get speed due to a majority of players using high speed teams. Yeah, it doesn't really change the fact that he'll be slow, but at least he won't hit the point where for every 2 attacks from the enemy, he only gets 1. I mean, that's just sad. Looking through artifacts, of course it's going to depend on how you build your Axe God. Durandal is perfect for a tanky build, increase combat readiness when attacked, and triggers when health is less than 75%. Because he has a low speed, having this will help him in getting his S3 fast. Also, since he will be in the front line, you have plenty of chances to trigger this artifact. Sigurd's Scythe is perfect for a bruiser build and can also be used in a DPS build. Attack increases by 25% when health is less than 50% and absorbs 25% up to 50% of the damage dealt. Pair this with Lifesteal set as well as the rune from his skill tree. You know, the one where he heals himself if his HP is below 50%? Yeah, he's going to be a monster. Another mention is Uberius Tooth, which provides extra damage proportional to his attack. Pretty good if you have a full DPS build, since you will have very high crit chance. Downside to this is that his S2 will not trigger this effect since it's an AoE skill. So it's kinda useless for farming. For 4-star artifacts, Hellcutter is very good for offensive builds, increases attack and crit chance whenever a turn ends, stacking indefinitely. Stacks reset when the caster attacks. Because Axe God has a low base speed, he can build up a lot of stacks from this artifact. If you are using this, you can reduce his crit chance to 75% to 85% depending on this artifact's level. This gives you a chance to put more stats in damage, most specifically crit damage. Elspist is also good and works well for bruiser builds. If you don't have Sigurd's Scythe, then this is your go-to artifact, as health decreases, attack and speed increases up to 50% at max level. Since bruisers are built to sustain damage, this helps in boosting his turn to heal back up from S3. Attack boost will help heal back up from Lifesteal set. The other two, Strack Gauntlet and Crimson Seed, are pretty situational, better used for tanky builds, but personally I'd rather use Elspist for the extra speed. It helps in getting his S3 up fast. Rainbow Scale is also good for a tanky or support build. It increases both effectiveness and effect resistance to all allies by 5% up to 10%. Pretty good if your team composition relies on hitting lots of debuffs to trigger a nuke skill such as Sigrid, Baiken or Surin. For 3-star artifacts, there's a lot, and it's mostly due to his many different builds. Joker is good for offensive build, for that extra damage. Ascending Axe is good for both DPS and bruiser, generally if low in crit chance. Sword of the Morning is good for bruisers. It's literally a downgraded version of Elspist. Aqua Rose for a tanky build for more survivability, and Prophetic Candlestick for both support and farming builds. The best part about this artifact is that if it triggers on top of his extra turn when using S2, well, guess what? You can use again on his next turn. Perfect for farming. However, he does have Obscurity Rune, which also reduces this skill by 1, but the problem is the trigger chance, which is pretty low at 15%, so in a way this serves more as an insurance. This is good for support builds since it also reduces the cooldown of his S3, closing the defense breakdown time. Axe God is one of the most versatile units in the game. So versatile that you can use him in any contents, events, raid, outer, farming, PvP, you name it. He is a dark type unit, which is an advantage when it comes to elements. He has tons of uses in his kit: defense break, AoE, strong single target skills, attack down, attack up, sustain. Jesus Christ, what does this guy not have? In PvP, he fits in any cleave teams and is best to gear him mostly to maximize damage. Since he has a low base speed, generally he will be slower compared to the rest of his team. In a way, this kinda works well in his favor since other cleavers in your team will chunk down enemy HP, low enough to trigger an extra turn on S2. This leaves any survivors to get axed by his S3. The downside to this is that since he will be in the back of the turn, you are giving your opponent a chance to attack, and in some cases this might be enough to screw your team. It's better to sit him out if versing high speed AoE debuffers, especially those that decrease hit chance and attack down, since Axe God in PvP relies on his S2. You know, he's like your janitor. He's the one that cleans up and wipes up the whole floor. If he can't at least trigger his extra turn, then it's going to be a tough battle onwards. And that concludes this build guide. So what do you think? Is this someone that's fitting with the name Axe God? I'd say he's more of a god of all trades if you ask me. Pulling him is not actually that bad. I know you want Challenger Dominiel or those 5-star ML units, we all do. But at least he's better than most of the 3-star ML units. However, he does need a lot of investment to get him to a mint state, especially his skill tree. In my opinion, all units that goes through specialty are on par with 5-star units. Not ML, the normal ones. But unlocking his skill tree does require him to reach level 50, as well as completing his specialty quest. Thanks for watching, and if you'd like to see more build guides, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video. Rover out.